You're listening to the Sweet Life Entrepreneur Podcast. Simplified strategies to grow your service business and launch a life you love faster. With business mentor and entrepreneur activator, April Beach.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, nobody knows what the heck to do with LinkedIn. And so whatever they learn from this podcast episode is going to be more than they knew before.
More than they have.
All right?
Exactly.
So, we always can do this again down the road and add more deadly sins to this, right?
That's right.
Like if you pick like 2 deadly sins, people would be loaded with content information that they didn't know before. So I think we're okay. We're okay.
We're good. And I have a feeling you and I could talk and talk.
Oh my gosh. I know we could. We totally could. We will. We will do that. We'll have beers without 1,000 people around.
Exactly.
For sure.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So I'll come back and pre-record the intro later.
Perfect.
All right. Welcome to the Sweet Life Podcast, Viveka. I will tell you guys that Viveka and I first met at a bar. 2 entrepreneurs walk into a bar. It was actually an organized bar function. It was actually a social media day Denver, and Viveka was there, and it was just a blast. It was such a cool party. Right. Like it was my first experience with jumbo Jenga or like giant Jenga and cocktails. We had so much fun. And Viveka actually spoke the next day at Social Media Day Denver on LinkedIn. Now, I am the first to admit that I've been on LinkedIn, I think since maybe 2006 or 2007, I had a LinkedIn profile. It's been sitting there. I have tons of connections. I don't really connect with anybody in a meaningful way. I'm just going to flat out throw myself under the bus and say I suck at LinkedIn. And so it's just kind of like another one of those things. Now, I understand LinkedIn strategy, and I consult a lot of clients that it applies to start utilizing and learn LinkedIn. But I sure don't teach them how to do that. I'm like, okay, this is a really good idea for you to learn LinkedIn. You should
totally do it.
Right. Have fun with that. Tell me how it goes.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much where we are right now. Like business strategist coach of the year, right? Like go figure it out and then come back and tell me. So Viveka is here on the Sweet Life podcast to help really, I would say 99.9% of us realize what the heck that we should be doing for LinkedIn. Who is it appropriate for? And what I do know is LinkedIn is really getting aggressive to compete with Facebook and YouTube and really starting to do a lot of cool things that we're used to doing on those other platforms, right? So,
exactly.
So take it away, introduce yourself, tell us how the heck you became the at LinkedIn expert, and really, just give yourself a big, awesome intro here to our podcast listeners.
Awesome. So, I became the LinkedIn expert because I got the Twitter handle. I'm not kidding. It's if you claim a space for yourself, then you spend the rest of your time proving it true. So, and I was just talking to someone about this like 5 minutes before we got on the call, and he asked me the same question. He said, "So why do you call yourself the LinkedIn expert?" And I said, "Well, I was in a Twitter class. This was again 2007, I think, and my name Viveka, Viveka, was taken by an Indian paper company." And there was only like 132,000 users at Twitter at the time. It kind of pissed me off. But anyway, I'm glad it was. I'm glad it was taken. And then Viveka von Rosen, they didn't have the longer Twitter handles at that point. So I'm like, I'm a LinkedIn expert. And I was actually sitting next to my ex-fiance at the time, who was also a LinkedIn expert. And I just happened to like hit enter before he did, no lie.
Oh my gosh.
So I got it.
That.
And then like a year later, there was this tool, I don't even know what it was called, but it would go through all the social channels and see if your username was available. And if it was available, it would send you the link so you could set up and Sorry, my dog's making really strange noises. That you can go in.
No worries.
I'm like, that's a new one.
If it's not your dog, it's mine. So we're good. We're good.
I swear that was my dog and not my stomach. I really was like, so I went through and I saw this in this app, so that's the reason I got LinkedIn Expert on Instagram, on YouTube. It wasn't available yet on Facebook or LinkedIn, but I got those eventually too. But yeah, and then spent the rest of the time proving it was true. And then I got a couple book deals. So that kind of cemented it. And yeah.
Okay, so we could do a whole entire podcast about putting yourself out there and then making it happen. Right? About just what you said, about being bold and putting yourself out there and making it happen. That's not what we're planning on talking about today, but we'll definitely come back and we'll use you as the case study of totally going for it and then figuring it out later.
Yeah, exactly. And that was that was the story of my early career.
I love it. But now, you did it. I mean, you're the cat's meow of LinkedIn. And so, first of all, what is the problem? What's the perception of LinkedIn? I mean, I can share with you what I hear in my space, but what is the perception, or what's the thing that most people say to you and they're like, oh shit, I don't use LinkedIn. I have no idea how.
Job seeker site. It's for job seekers, right? That's the first thing that comes across. And LinkedIn's trying really, really, really hard to go, to make it more than that. But to be fair, that's how it started. It was a job seeker site for Reed and his friends. And what most people, or a lot of people, don't know about Reid Hoffman, the one of the founders of LinkedIn, is he actually had a dating site. And he said, wouldn't this be cool if we had a dating site for business professionals in the San Francisco area? Because it's just exploding, and telecom and tech and everything is just exploding. So I should create this job seeker site for tech people. And so that's essentially what LinkedIn was. And then it kept being that way. Plus, that's how LinkedIn monetized for the longest time, was through its recruiter platform. And so, there was nothing really to get them to move beyond that either, because that's how they were making their money until Facebook, in 2007, because LinkedIn predates Facebook by 4 years. So, once Facebook and Twitter kind of exploded on the scene, then LinkedIn's like, oh, maybe there's something else here. And that's when they started going, okay, so maybe we should make this more than just a job seeker site. Maybe we should, add some content marketing opportunities and some social networking opportunities. And that's when there was the glory years, I call them, from 2007 to 2011, when LinkedIn was just, it was opening up all kinds of new opportunities, and it had an open API, so there was a lot of third-party apps that you could use to do really cool things with it, and it had a lot of great strategic partnerships with other things like WordPress. And then Jeff Weiner came in, and that all went away for a while. But then Microsoft bought it, and now it's on the upswing again.
Okay, when did that happen? When did Microsoft buy it?
2000 and...
a couple years ago?
Yeah, 16, I think.
Yeah.
15, 16.
I remember hearing that, and I remember wondering, what was going to change.
Most people thought it was going to go downhill, and they've done nothing but good for it, in my humble opinion. At least from what Jeff did to it before, so I'm not a fan.
Gotcha.
He's still CEO, but... Oh.
Gotcha. Okay, but so now, we're talking to usually solo entrepreneurs who listen to this podcast, consultants, specialty experts, individuals that are really, really good at a particular trade that have nothing to do with corporate. Right, exactly. And so how is LinkedIn, talk to us about LinkedIn and the platform, and how to use that if you aren't a quote unquote employee, but you are a solopreneur. Talk to us about the LinkedIn strategies, and then you're going to go over, I promised everybody, you're going to go over the 7 or 8 or 3 or how many ever deadly sins there are. So she's going to make sure that we know.
I'm going to talk until we run out of time.
That's right. The deadly sins of LinkedIn. We're going to know those, of what not to do. But let's kind of keep talking about first, who is this for? How can individual entrepreneurs start leveraging this platform, and why should they?
Yeah, and understand before I co-founded Vengresso, I was an entrepreneur, solopreneur myself. So, and both in the business to business as well as the business to consumer market. And the thing I love about LinkedIn is, well, Google loves it. So it's a really great way, especially if you're a solopreneur, entrepreneur, or especially if you were like I was, like I had my day job, but I really wanted to do this other thing. And so I was able to use LinkedIn to brand myself and to create a strong brand. And because Google likes LinkedIn so much, that brand showed up on the first page of Google, i.e. LinkedIn Expert, before any website that I invested in, so or any content that I invested in. So to go and answer your first question, who is LinkedIn for? Anyone who wants to do business. It's not, great. It's a great place to find employees or contractors. It's a great place to find vendors, but it is also a great place to find prospects or donors, or whatever the people who help you make money in your business are. It's a great place to go find those folks as well. Now it's Instagram and Facebook are going to do better as far as if you have a consumable, especially a lower price consumable that you want to sell, perfume, lipstick, or even lower end services, something that's less than $50 an hour or $50 a pop. You could do really well on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, but it's not an either or. Why wouldn't you also be on LinkedIn? Because at the very least you can establish your brand, and along with establishing your brand, you can really establish a level of expertise. So to what I was mentioning earlier, I wasn't the LinkedIn expert when I got the Twitter handle. No one really was, except for maybe Reid Hoffman and some of the folks that he created LinkedIn with. But I claimed it, and then I started becoming it. And so that's really what LinkedIn can do, is it can help you position yourself as an expert in your industry, whatever your industry is. And why I love LinkedIn is, well, I would never have gotten the book deal for a lot of reasons if it wasn't for LinkedIn, but literally my editor saw some writing that I did on LinkedIn. He saw essentially a blog post that I had written on LinkedIn. And he's like, oh, she knows LinkedIn and she knows how to write. Let's have her do a book for Wiley. I'm like, okay.
Wow, right.
So,
yeah.
Right? I know, because I'm a unsuccessful fiction writer who tried I tried everything I could to get my first science fiction novels published, and it just didn't work. So when a publisher comes to you and says, hey, write a book for us, you're like, yes, I will.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Right.
Right. And so there's a huge opportunity for individuals to create content. And now LinkedIn has grown up. So it's not just written word, it's visuals, it's video. So there's a lot of opportunity there, especially if you're already creating similar content for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. So that's number one. Oh, yeah. And then the other thing is, even if you're not connecting with your customers or consumers on LinkedIn, there are other people that can help you. And so another thing to go along the lines of, becoming an influencer is there's a lot of people who write articles for newspapers, for blogs. And so all of the articles I've ever contributed to on Entrepreneur and CNN and Money and all of the, names that we Forbes. Oh, crap. That we did. Sorry. That was my drink. I just spilled all over.
I love you. You're so real. Oh my gosh, I love it. So, I
was on Forbes, splash.
I was on Forbes. This is how you do it. So all the PR, basically, you got you. PR, exactly. Yeah, you
exclusively. Yeah.
So did they see your writings on LinkedIn first, and then you submitted other writings, or did they use LinkedIn? Do you know, to say, hey, this girl's legit. She actually knows what she's talking about.
Yeah, they used, because I had examples of my work on LinkedIn, they could go, hey, this girl's legit. Yeah. And I showed up well in searches, So if they were looking for a quote, I showed up well in searches. And so they would go to LinkedIn, they'd see I knew what I was talking about. They'd see other articles that I'd written or been featured in for other big names. And so, now I'm suddenly legit.
Yeah, I love that. Okay,
Yeah.
so components that people can post on LinkedIn. We have obviously the articles, the long form articles, and we have the shorter posts that show up in your feed, right?
Yep. Yep.
Video and tell us about video. So how long can the video be? What are people posting? I know it's not. It's not technically at the recording of this like actually live feed yet. Correct?
No, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Apparently that's coming. So two things that are in the hopper, and we'll see if they ever come to light, because I've been saying they've been in the hopper now for 4 years almost. But apparently, live feed is coming, and apparently video messaging is in your private messaging, the ability to like Skype, because LinkedIn also owns, not LinkedIn, Microsoft also owns Skype. So, duh. Anyway, like how easy would that be to put a Skype button right in your private messages? But anyway, they don't have that yet. So
we could have recorded this podcast in LinkedIn because we use Skype to record the podcast, and then we don't have to worry about all these other things. Be like, hey, Viveka, here's my link.
Exactly. I mean, there's such a huge opportunity there that I'm like, come on, LinkedIn. But anyway, okay. So native video it's recorded video that you upload. So to your point, it's not a feed. It's not live, but it's also not like a YouTube link. It's you record a video on your phone or on your computer, and then you upload it, hence native video, and then it gets exponentially more views than something you would share a link to YouTube, etc. And I've tested it over and over and over again, and it's 10 to 100 times more visibility.
Gee whiz. Okay, and how long can the videos be? What's the video length?
Yep. So anywhere from 3 seconds to 10 minutes. How long you want your video to be, it really is reliant on what the content is. Most people are still pretty short attention spanny, so you're looking at 30 to 90 seconds. But if we wanted to take little segments out of this, we could do like little 10-minute segments, and as long as it's interesting and people are learning from it, they might actually sit through the whole 10 minutes. Although I never have. To be perfectly honest,
well, I love it. Yeah, right.
So, but what's cool about this is if you're already creating video content for Facebook, or you're doing even Facebook Lives, as long as they're engaging enough, you could download that live and re-upload it into LinkedIn as native content if it was under 10 minutes. So there's a lot of ways to, and then, with IGTV, and there's just a lot of ways to capture video that you're already creating anyway, and utilize it on LinkedIn too. But yeah, that 10x, 10 to 100x, and that's time after time after time. My most shared videos almost at 100,000 views, like 89,000, something like that views. And then even like some piece of crap that I throw up there, which you really shouldn't, but sometimes you do, is at like 1,200 views. Whereas a post I share might get 250 to 500 views. So
that's crazy.
It's crazy. It's nuts.
And you just upload the videos to your feed. There's no way to save video in your article place yet, right?
No, you can actually share the link to, so if you, and articles are kind of meh right now. I'm really hoping LinkedIn brings them back, because I think they were just such a cool tool, the LinkedIn Publisher articles. But you can actually, when you share a native video, grab that link and put that link into your article. So maybe drive traffic that way. But yeah. Now, what I do recommend is that when you share your native video on LinkedIn, like almost make it a mini blog post. You've got 1,200 characters there to kind of describe what's in the video, because a lot of people aren't going to hit play unless they just love you. If you've got raving fans, they're just like Gary Vee, right? People are going to eat anything he puts on there.
Right.
Anything he serves them, they're eating it up.
Totally.
Whereas that's not all of us. So, I like to put like bullet points of either what this video is about with the bullet points, or some learning points, or something to describe what the video is. So A, if people don't actually want to watch the video, they at least get some value out of it. Or B, they can see the video description and go, oh yeah, I think I'm going to listen to that, hit play. Especially for the longer, the 4, 5, 6, 7 minute videos.
Okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to do a little case study because
Yes.
this podcast is going to publish, oh gosh, it's like the first week of October. I am going to have Michelle, my content quarterback, that's
There
what I
we
call
go.
her.
I love it.
We're going to take a snip of this podcast, people, and everything Viveka is saying, and we're going to do, we're going to take the video, so you'll get to see the behind the scenes. We're going to do the bullet points of what we talk about, and Viveka spilling her drink. I'll make sure we try to get that in there too. And we're going to post it at April Beach. So that's my LinkedIn, and then Viveka can share a link to that too. And so you guys cruise over there. I will make I'll make sure to tag
that link with me. Like, tag me on it, let me know. And then when you share the video rather, and this is a good teaching point too, because it's on your feed, so it disappears. And LinkedIn was talking about having a separate, area that the LinkedIn videos would live, but it never came to be. So my better videos, not all my videos, but my better videos, I'll save the link to it. I'll just either bookmark it or put it in a Chrome folder. So, but my point is, once you hit publish, there's 3 dots on the top right-hand side, just like on every other social network ever.
Right.
And the 3 dots, one of them's copy URL. And so you'll copy that URL and you'll save it somewhere that you'll be able to find it again, whether it's an Excel sheet or, like I said, whether you just take that link and then bookmark it so that you can find it again.
Okay, cool.
But anyway, you send me that link.
I'll be the guinea pig. You guys listening to this episode can go over there and check it out, and we'll make sure there's a link to that in the show notes for this episode, which will be at sweetlifepodcast.com/90. This is episode 9090. So also, okay, now I have clearly 1,000 questions for you. You're never going to get to the training that you had planned to deliver, because I am like, oh, Viveka, I've been waiting for this conversation since June, I think. So what about hashtags? What's happening with hashtags? Yeah, talk to me about LinkedIn hashtags now. Yep.
So there's and these are actually really good questions, because the ebook that I am going to share is not none of these features were even available back then. So hashtags are a thing again on LinkedIn. They reintroduced them. Well, they always had them, but they just didn't work for a while. So they reintroduced them a couple of years ago. And then just a couple months ago, they came out with this thing called hashtag communities. And it's really, it's almost like little groups. It's almost like tweet chats, but it's more moderated by LinkedIn. And so when you add hashtags to your videos and or updates, if LinkedIn finds there's enough relevancy between the hashtag and the actual content of your post, which is again why adding a little bit more content in your descriptions is important. But if LinkedIn senses the relevancy there, it will actually put your post, your update, into one of these communities, and then those communities tend to get a little bit more visibility because people follow the communities, and if you got your notifications turned on, you can be notified of new content in the communities. So it's like it's like LinkedIn groups and tweet chats got together and had a baby, and that baby would be hashtag communities.
Wow, I like it. Okay, I'll do that. Well, I noticed when we were posting, I think we published, it was just in the feed for this week's Sweet Life Entrepreneur podcast, all of a sudden the hashtags were like bold and kind of pretty. And I was like, oh, okay, now they're really emphasizing this. I'm a visual person. All of a sudden, whoa, bang, there's, and they're suggesting hashtags. And I'm like, okay,
exactly.
Hashtags are a thing. I will pay attention. Very cool. Now I need to ask Viveka because I'm still not sure, but great. Okay.
Yeah, and LinkedIn will make some suggestions for you. And don't take all of them, because a lot of them just, their AI is not quite, where chatbot AI is at yet. Right. But they will make some suggestions. Choose the ones that are relevant. Add your own. So there's 2 little strategies I recommend. First of all, 5 or 6 hashtags is enough. Don't do the like 50, 60, 80, 100 hashtag thing, because then you're eating into your actual content space. The real ninja trick, though, is create a hashtag that is unique to you, right? So ours is hashtag Vengresso Vids. No one's going to accidentally put Vengresso Vids, hopefully, on their articles. And what happens is yes, I always save the links of my better videos, but if I want to access kind of all of my company's videos, then if I do a search on the hashtag VinGressoVids, all of the company's content that has that hashtag will show up. And then it's a little bit easier for me to find. So that's another little ninja trick there.
Okay, cool. And we have our hashtag is Sweet Life Podcast.
Yeah.
Hopefully nobody takes that.
Yeah.
So that works for LinkedIn too. All right, so let's go ahead now and transition into what you were going to share with us about the things not to do on LinkedIn. Like, what are these deadly sins? Don't do these. You will kill whatever it is that you're trying to build, that you still might not be sure what it is you're building yet, but it's definitely going to die if you do these 7 deadly sins. Exactly. Using LinkedIn. So, so help us.
Okay, so number 1 deadly sin is having either no presence on LinkedIn or having a really crappy one. And I'm not sure which is worse. It depends on the industry you're in. If you're in corporate, B2B, software, tech, and you don't have a LinkedIn profile, it's going to look really bad. If you're an executive and you don't have a profile, it's going to look really bad. So most of the people on this call aren't that, so you don't really have to worry. The second thing, though, is that might be even worse is having a really mediocre LinkedIn profile, or worse than mediocre, having a really bad LinkedIn profile. And the problem with that is Google loves LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. So the good news and the bad news, right? The good news is Google loves LinkedIn. And if you've got a good profile, it's a really cheap, i.e. free way to create a strong personal brand that gets found on Google as well as LinkedIn. The bad news, the opposite side of that penny, is if your profile looks bad, it can actually cost you business. So there's something called COI, which is the cost of inaction. And, you might actually lose business if someone's like, oh, yeah, Sweet Life Podcast, I heard about that, and I'm going to go check out this April Beach. Oh God! And actually, no one would say that because your profile, despite what you said, is good. It's not costing you business. I always say,
don't be so sure.
No, I pulled it up, and it's like at least you've got a background image that. Well, here, let me go into the 7 deadly sins so I can I can say why it doesn't suck as bad as you think it does.
Okay. Yay! Thanks.
Yay!
It's my ego boost of the day.
Yeah, you could just call it quits now. But really, your profile is going to either cost you business, it's not going to do anything, or it's going to win you business. And we really want you to use your profile so that it'll win you business. So that's number 1. Is make sure you have a profile and that it looks good, and that it's easy enough to do, right? If you just book. And I'm going to give you the tips now. But if you just book like an hour to work on your LinkedIn profile, you can make it look pretty darn good in an hour, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Right.
So first thing, background image. It's 1586 by 308. I'm sorry, it's 1584 by 396 pixels. Think 16 by 400. Why LinkedIn couldn't make it 16 by 400, I don't know. And to pick on April, except I'm not picking on her because it's a good background. Her name is April Beach. She's got a beachfront behind her, as well as you can see the beach behind her. Those of you who are watching this and not listening to the podcast, she's got a picture of a beach behind her, which is the same, or there is water behind her as well on her profile. So we got the beach thing going on, right? And that's very good aligned marketing. And by the way, when you see the articles that she shares, both her long form articles that are like blog posts, and even her updates, there's beachiness to it. So that's great. That kind of branding is good. Now, you can either just find, I mean, you don't want to upload something illegal from Google, but find an image that you're allowed to share. Just make sure it's basically 1600 by 400, or you can always go to Fiverr, Fiverr.com, Fiverr.com, and Fiverr.com will make a LinkedIn background image for you. So that's a really easy way, and it literally takes less than a minute to upload that background image on your LinkedIn profile. So that's number one. Number two, have a photo that looks like you, right? This photo looks exactly like April. It doesn't look like April in 1982. It doesn't look like, photoshopped within an inch of her life, April. It doesn't look like April with short black hair. It doesn't look like 800-pound April. It just looks like April. And so that's what we want, because there's nothing, right? You go to a conference, Social Media Day Denver, and someone pulls up your LinkedIn profile and or invites you to connect after or before or whatever, and they're like, really?
Right, like was that your college graduation picture? Right, you're dreaming there, babe. Right? I would hate to be that person. Right? Okay, so make it current. So a current picture.
Current, just you, not the boyfriend cut off at the armpit, like just you, neutral background or branded background as in April's case. But you want to make sure it looks like you, so that when people meet you for the first time, there's alignment there and not a disconnect. So that will help to build your brand. Then underneath that is your headline, and most people have like title at company. Boring. Right? And this is like the world's shortest elevator speech, but you still have an opportunity there to describe who you are, what you do, and who you help. And literally, she's a business consultant and podcast host. Yes, that's true. But also she helps entrepreneurs and companies develop purpose-driven businesses and programs. So if you're not an entrepreneur or a company, or you're not interested in purpose-driven business or programs, or you don't listen to podcasts, or you're not in business, then why are you on LinkedIn? But right? But if you self-select, you go, oh yeah, I totally would love to listen to that podcast, or I totally would love some consulting, or I totally love to at least scroll down in April's profile and see what else she does, which is a beautiful description of what she does and who she helps and what she believes in, instead of like the first three lines from her resume cut and paste in. And that's the other thing that people do in the summary section. Because they think this is only for finding a job, they cut and paste their resume in there. But you're missing out on so much opportunity, right? You want to tell people what's in it for them, why they should work with you, what they'll get out of it, what the benefit is. They don't care. They could care less about if you're a quota crushing salesperson. In fact, that might turn them off, right? They want to learn, like, what can I do? How can you help me make my life better? And that's all I care about. And later I'll learn about you, but how can you help me? And that's really what your summary section should focus on, which it does.
Yay! Okay, I'm feeling good. All right, I have not written that in so long. Now I have to go back and read it before we post this podcast episode.
That's what you do. Yeah, exactly. Like, I haven't had the Sweet Life Entrepreneur System in 14 years.
All right.
I don't work with athletes anymore. That's crazy talk. No, I think this is all still real relevant. What I would do, the only thing I would add there is your contact info. You've got your email address right at the beginning, which is good, because especially the way LinkedIn shows on mobile. If you're comfortable doing so, I would also put a phone number at the bottom, or actually in your header or your background image, but only if you're comfortable. And if you're not comfortable, consider Google, what's the Google phone number?
Voice.
Google Voice.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
That way you don't put in your cell number and then you get spammed within an inch of your life for the rest of your life.
Right.
And then the other thing that you've done, which is good, although I would customize it just as aprilbeach.com, and so you can actually customize the link, the piece of media that you have in there, to describe, like this is a Sir Richard Branson quote, but you can always upload media, again, podcasts, or the landing page for your podcast would be better because it would have a better visual, but you could upload your pod, and I would definitely recommend doing a couple key podcasts of individuals that have higher visibility. Upload those landing pages on your blog. For those of you who don't podcast, of course, anything that proves your expertise. This is why I got the book deal, and this is why I get all the mentions and quotes and articles, is because I've got writing proof that I know what I'm talking about, and other people's articles that mention me. And so it's really great for me to call myself the LinkedIn expert. It's even better when other people do. And so if you've got, and Google yourself, like there might be some kind of media out there on the internet, on the Google, that really helps, that really speaks to your level of expertise. And guess what? If there isn't, then you need to go talk to a client or your cousin, but just pretend she's a client, and get a testimonial and upload that sucker onto your LinkedIn profile, right? And I mean, there's many different ways that you can begin to position your expertise, because when I called myself a LinkedIn expert, I probably didn't have any media proving it was true at the time. Right. Very slowly, you start small and then you grow.
Okay, so I have a question. So when you're saying upload the podcast here, that is just kind of like we did most recently with the episode. So what we're going to do here, which is the summary of the podcast and a link to where it is on our blog page, or are you actually saying, is there a different way that just went totally over my head? Is there a way to actually upload the podcast media? Can I upload an audio file? So you LinkedIn?
Can upload an audio file. It's really ugly on LinkedIn, so you can do it. I wouldn't recommend it. I would actually put, have the podcast on whatever, on the landing page, which has the description in it, and I would actually put the link to that, where the podcast lives, the latest episode to, and I don't know how your podcast is set up, if you've got a different kind of landing page per podcast, or if it just piles on top of each other.
Each episode, both. Each episode does have its own landing page. Yeah.
Okay, good.
So I'll for sure be posting this one on there.
Yes.
Because what you just said is post the episodes with people that have greater reach than you do on LinkedIn. So I am going to take you to the bank with that one, girl.
There we go. Because what happens is, and of course you share it as an update too, but what happens is people see you aligned with that person, and and whatever. And this is why it's so important that you hang out with the right people, right? But when they see you aligned with that particular person on a subconscious level, it elevates, right? Mm-hmm. And so if I can align myself with Sir Richard Branson, if I can align myself with, whoever, it subconsciously elevates me in the people who are looking at my profile's minds. So yeah, especially for that expertise positioning in a niche market. So it might be, maybe, any podcast you would get with Gary Vee, you might want to pop on there. But like, let's say you did a podcast with someone who's not so well known generally, but super well known in the women's entrepreneur area.
Amy Porterfield was just
Amy, right.
Yeah,
so
Amy's great.
And Amy's a rock star. And in fact, Steve Dotto and I were just talking about Amy earlier. So love Amy.
So awesome.
So yeah, obviously you want to align yourself with Amy, right?
Yeah,
with the Marie Forleos, with the Mari Smiths. Mm-hmm. So yeah, absolutely.
So uploading that content. Now let me tell you the other thing I started doing about a year ago, and I kind of slacked off for the last couple of months, but every time we have a podcast guest on the show, I will go and I will then endorse that guest on their LinkedIn profile.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I do that.
So proactively endorsing, because it's 10 seconds. Oh, by the way, way easier to do on your computer than it is on mobile, because on mobile you have to go through how do you know them and why do you know them and why would you endorse them. On the LinkedIn, on the browser, you just go, yeah, she's good. So it's like a like, right? It's like a Facebook like. But yeah, no, absolutely go through and proactively endorse your people in your connections, not just your network. You have to be first level connections with them, because A, it takes a second. B, they see you've done it. Mm-hmm. C, it aligns you with that person, to my point earlier. D, gives you an opportunity to actually start a conversation. Like, hey, I don't know if you saw that I endorsed you for blah, 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 blah. Really loved the last episode that you did on blah, 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 blah. Would love to chat with you about whatevs. And so that gives you an opportunity to have a conversation.
Right. Love that. Okay, so I was doing the right thing with zero strategy. Love that. Now I'll go back and add that to the list with some more strategic positioning behind it. Okay, so let's recap 7 deadly sins of LinkedIn, like, or just whatever this list is that you're saying.
Yeah.
Don't do
I think I went through them. I went off on my own.
No, I love it.
But yeah,
totally the way I teach. Okay, go ahead. I get it, but let's recap.
Yeah. Number 1, have a profile. Number 2, when you're crafting your profile, focus on your audience. Like, oh, I can help anyone with a face.
Right.
Doesn't help anybody. Like, oh my God, that drives me nuts. I remember going to networking events back in the day. And I do. And I think I might have even have told this. I know I've told the story on stage. I don't remember if I did it at social media camp, or social media day. But there was, I remember this one event specifically. One woman's like, I can help anyone with a face. And the other woman, Dina, was like, I can help. I help women in their 40s feel more confident when they're meeting with clients for the first time. I'm like, I'm a woman in my 40s. And Deanna, rather, not Dina. And she sold Arbonne, and I bought like $800 worth of it, because I'm a woman in my 40s, well, I was then, and I speak in front of audiences, and I want to feel more confident, and I want to look my best, and I also don't want to look my age. And so, bam, because she was very specific. Now, does Arbonne help women in their 30s? Of course it does. Women in their 60s? Of course it does. Men? Yes. But her audience at that particular networking event was women in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, but mostly in their 40s. And so was her messaging, and she sold me. So
yeah. So, just for our listeners,
you're writing your profile.
Right. So just for our listeners who are avid Sweet Life podcast listeners, you guys, I hone in on this all the freaking time. This is what we call niching hard. Don't be afraid to do it. You have to niche down. And so what Viveka is saying is your profile needs to reflect your niche really, really well.
Absolutely. Because you want to speak to those people. And I mean, in the language you use, in the emojis that you might use, in the coloring that you do. Like when I first started doing my previous business to Vengresso was called LinkedIn to Business. And my first version of LinkedIn to Business was all pinks and oranges and purples and lovely, vibrant colors. What I found out, though, was at that point, I was really teaching men how to use LinkedIn, because I was doing sales strategies, and so I had all these lovely feminine colors, and I was attracting men with my content, but I was turning them off with my branding. Yeah. And so by knowing, now I could have done one of two things. I could have gone, I really want to work with women in the entrepreneurial space, in which case then I would have had to have shifted the content that I was writing to be more about feeling and energizing, as compared to what I was doing, which was crushing it and money and numbers and crap.
Right.
So know your audience, because you're going to write and create content and media specifically for that audience, from both the branding and the content that you create. So, and if you try to be everything to everyone, as you got to niche hard.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So we have to have a presence. It can't suck.
It can't suck.
But it doesn't mean it has to be perfect.
Exactly.
And you need to have your niche and your profile and say what you do and who you do it for. Okay, and what else?
And use the different elements to hone in on that. So we talked about that professional headline, which is maybe we didn't. We started talking about it, then I got distracted. Your professional headline is that little section right underneath your name that normally just says title at company, but you really, we did talk about it because we talked about yours.
Okay, good. I was thinking.
Really dive into that. You've got 120 characters. And by the way, here's a ninja trick. If you use the mobile app, you actually have 210 characters. post.
Oh.
So if you have a little more to say, you can use the mobile app. Another thing that you're going to want to do is you have the opportunity to create a unique URL. So to what we were speaking about earlier, if you Google LinkedIn expert, my LinkedIn profile is the first thing that shows up under the paid ads. And sometimes above them. And that is entirely because of my LinkedIn URL, which is linkedin.com/in/LinkedIn expert. So if you customize your URL to your name, to your area of expertise, you will be more findable on Google. And that is huge. Also, it looks better on a business card or resume or whatever, or email signature or something that's not hyperlinked. So that's definitely one of the things that you want to do. What we haven't talked about is your network, and you want to find that comfort. You want to find that spot between people you know and potential people that you could connect with maybe in the future, who can help you grow your business. And so LinkedIn says only to connect with people you know, but I mean, that's Outlook. That's a Rolodex, like, hello. So you definitely want to use LinkedIn just like you would a networking event where you go in, you see who you know, you see who they know, you maybe ask for an introduction, or you listen in on the conversation and slide in when it's relevant, i.e. you watch what they're sharing and slide in with a comment when it's relevant. And then that will allow you to grow your network kind of organically but strategically, so that you begin to fill it with prospects. And the nice thing is, your prospects, once they begin to engage with your content, their prospects get to see it. So when I get, even though I've got like way too many connections on LinkedIn, like it's unmanageable, when I share a video on LinkedIn and it gets 5,000 views or 80,000 views or 2,000 views, still only about 10 to 20% of the people viewing that content are my first level connections. It's the people in there, who they've shared it with, and they've shared it with, and they've shared it. It's the viral effect. And so you got to make sure, though, that your core network of connections is relevant. Don't accept everyone who invites you to connect on LinkedIn, because a bunch of them are scammers. I mean, there's catfishing schemes galore. There's like all the dating stuff is on LinkedIn too. So careful with that. But on the other hand, you don't want to only connect to people you know, because then you're missing out on a huge opportunity to strategically grow your network. So that's another thing that we didn't actually talk about. And then talk to those people.
Talk to them. Yeah. Talk to them. So, have a conversation. Talk to them.
Exactly.
I just had a girl reach out to me on LinkedIn. Well, first of all, I have to say, knowing we were doing this episode today, I went into my LinkedIn profile and I'm like, oh, gee, I haven't really accepted any, LinkedIn invitations in a long time. And well, it's been like a couple weeks, but I had like 40 something invites. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go through these. And so I really did start going through. And I mean, there's no strategy behind it. But if they didn't have a background picture, I was not accepting it.
Right,
if
right,
they, if we didn't have any mutual connections, I don't even know how they were able to send me a connect, but I wasn't accepting it. And so I'm starting to be more picky. But what I found is that I've owned so many different businesses in so many different niches. And so now I'm like, the majority, especially being on there since whenever, dinosaur age, the majority of my connections on LinkedIn are in it's still entrepreneur space, but it's just a really different space. And so should I go back through and start deleting those connections? Because we have nothing to talk about now.
Yeah. There almost went my drink again. So by the way, hashtag Viviklutz. That is also my unique hashtag. I'm so klutzy. I was on stage at Inbound the other day, and I hope someone got it on video, and I hope they share it. But like my flipper. So I'm like doing the flipper, and I'm expressive on stage. So the clicker thing goes flying out of my hand. Well, then I'm like, I'm going to catch it. And it bounces off my finger and bounces back into the air 4 times.
No.
Before it finally lands behind the Inbound signage, so I can't get it.
Okay, so let me just say, because if you're not watching the behind the scenes video, I love Viveka. She talks with her hands. It's like everything's crashing around her because it's huge hands. She does the same thing on stage. Clearly, she just like said that. So if you guys have a chance to see Viveka speak in person, she is absolutely on fire. It is awesome. And you'll never be bored. I promise you that. And so she's back here on the same way as our podcast, on the behind the scenes of the podcast, as she is on stage. Hands in the air, and very expressive. We just don't care. It's actually so true, which is what's so fun about it.
I can't remember what the question was, though.
So shoot. Oh yeah. Okay, so should I unfriend old or? Oh yeah. So go through and clean house. Like I need to.
You might as well. LinkedIn in and of itself used to have some really cool tools, but they got rid of them. So you can't really use LinkedIn like a CRM system, but it's much easier to manage your network if it's at least people relevant to your business. Also, there will come a time, because LinkedIn has a limit of 30,000 connections, and I spend hundreds of dollars a month on my assistant who goes through and deletes people. So, I mean, it's getting more and more niche. But to avoid that problem, just like keep it clean from the onset. Don't go down to zero. Like, don't get me wrong, because the fact is, in order to be seen at all, you still need a network. So if you've only got like 300 connections, keep them. But if you've got 15,000 connections, you might want to shave off 1,000 or 2 or 5,000, depending on, how relevant they are, especially if you were, as I was, an open networker back in the day, simply meaning I would connect with anyone who invited me. I was a little bit loose. I was a promiscuous network. Like, come on into my network. So, no lie, the Miami Herald, that was the first big media. That was actually the newspaper. It was actually a newspaper article. That's how long ago it was. Right. But they did this whole article on me called The Promiscuous Networker.
No way. I want to see that. Can you pull it up from the archives?
I don't know. That's actually
That is absolutely, that's a throwback. You should post that somewhere. You should post that on LinkedIn. Absolutely funny. Okay, so today we talked about right. So today we talked about, my kids are calling me. See here, this is real live. We're not going to edit this stuff out. We're recording this episode at 5 p.m., which means my kids are out of school. And that is like, the day is done here, even on podcast recording day. I'm about to have 3 boys just romping through the garage door. And that's just, and a husband that's ready for some attention. So anyway, and so today on this podcast, we talked about who should be on LinkedIn. And it's pretty much, it's everybody, but anybody who wants to build a personal brand, a professional brand, especially B2B, those are our listeners. And we talked about what not to do, what to make sure you do. And then what I really love that we dove into today was the media. How to use the media. And I think that understanding that LinkedIn has native video, you can upload video, you can upload media, like we can share this podcast episode for those people that are creating consistent content all the time to build a relationship with our audience. LinkedIn is another amazing platform to do that. And you're saying it has better SEO. So, I mean, that's like a win-win-win because it's so hard, especially for new entrepreneurs, to get noticed on Instagram. And on Facebook, you're having to advertise. And on YouTube, it's, you're just getting buried by other video content. So
that's right.
I think this was a really great episode. And I know that, I don't know, I can't say that. Oh my gosh, you posted it up there. Okay, there she is. She posted her promiscuous networker blog. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. And so I just appreciate your time and I appreciate your expertise. And I think that our listeners really will take a lot away from this. If anything, follow Viveka at LinkedIn Expert. We're going to have the show notes for this episode at sweetlifepodcast.com/90, episode 90. And because I said it here on the podcast recording, I now have to follow through with what I promised everybody I was going to do and make sure that we take a clip of this behind the scenes and upload it to my LinkedIn, which is linkedin.com/in/April Beach. And make sure you guys can see this, and we'll put a summary of this in here too. So
maybe me spilling my drink everywhere.
That's right, but we'll put it in slow-mo.
And then use hashtag Viveka, because then we can really find it easily.
I'm writing this down. You should see all my LinkedIn notes here. All right, girl. It's so good to see you. Thank you so much for being on the show. I can't wait to connect with you again soon. And I think we're going to have lots of LinkedIn talks. So I'd love to have you back. And like, seriously, we could do one whole episode on how to pick the right people to network with, or how to reach out to people for introductions. We talked about this here, but I don't know that people are to that place yet. So I, if it's okay, if you're up for it, I'd love to have you back, definitely. And we'll just keep this very real and transparent. And this is what it is. Podcast interview rolling. We'll just kind of keep it an ongoing LinkedIn conversation. Thank you so much. All right. And I'll make sure that we have all the show notes here for them to download you're going to give us your 7 deadly sins written out.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Ebook. Exactly. Bam.
All right. Thanks.